Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you guys are doing good so far today. And I want to follow up on a video that I posted just recently. You've probably already seen it by now, talking about some of the individual accolades that the Seahawks players, coaches, front office people could win in 2023. So, in keeping with that theme, because it's we're close to the regular season, but not so close that we can't still talk about slightly frivolous things. I want to talk now about some Seahawks players who have a chance to do something of historical significance with their careers with the Seahawks in 2023. Some cases it's very significant, like historically NFL wide, everyone is going to have a feeling about that significant to, oh, it's just kind of significant to the team, to the Seahawks, to our franchise. But either way, I want to take a little bit of time to talk about some guys on this team who have a chance to move up the ladder historically for the Seattle Seahawks franchise. This first guy, admittedly, kind of small potatoes, especially compared to the other two guys. But I want to shout this out real quick just to get the video started. Quandre Diggs. So, Quandre Diggs has been here for a few years now, but he's already become one of the better interceptors of the ball in Seahawks franchise history. Since he's gotten here, that's been his claim to fame, and he's been very good at it. So, if you go to the list of Seahawks career defensive leaders ranked by interceptions, Quandre Diggs is currently 11th with 17. He's tied for 11th with 17 interceptions. And he's done this in a pretty short period of time, by the way, so that's actually quite impressive. The guy he's tied with played almost twice as many games. But if he can have just 5 interceptions this year, and 5 interceptions is something he has done as a Seahawk twice, so it's very reasonable. He moves past Keith Simpson, Darrell Williams, Sean Springs, and Marcus Trufant into 7th place all time. Now, there's a pretty hard ceiling at that point because Earl Thomas is 11 interceptions ahead. That's not going to happen. Probably not going to happen even next year. And then you start getting into the big heavy hitters of Seahawks franchise history. Guys like Earl Thomas, Richard Sherman, Kenny Easley, Dave Brown, Eugene Robinson, John Harris. Some of the all-time greats that Quandre, unless he plays like another decade, is not really going to touch. But 7th place is pretty good. It's kind of like that area just before you get to the legends of the Seahawks defensive back. What would you call it? Defensive back all-time room, I guess. So Quandre Diggs has a chance to do that this year. He could do it. Next guy, this is another one who's mostly only significant for the Seahawks franchise, but this one's a little bit bigger. This one is a little more significant compared to Quandre, because Tyler Lockett is almost certainly going to become the second most prolific receiver in Seahawks franchise history this year. If you go to the list of career receiving leaders for Seahawks, any position, but of course heavily slanted to wide receivers, you can see that Tyler Lockett is 48 receptions behind Brian Blades for his career. 48 receptions. Lockett should crush that even in a down season as long as he gets to play in every game. And he is 520 yards behind Brian Blades for second most receiving yards of all time in franchise history. He's already passed him in touchdowns by far, by the way. In fact, Lockett's already second in touchdowns. So if he has even a lackluster season this year, 49 catches, 521 yards, that would be a disappointment for him. He still moves into second all time in catches, yards, and catching touchdowns. And he becomes, other than Largent, who is way ahead, by the way, and I don't think Lockett's going to catch Largent anytime soon, the second most the most prolific receiver in Seahawks franchise history, outside of Largent. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty significant, I would say. Largent was only the best receiver in NFL history at the time of his retirement, so being behind him, there's nothing wrong with that. And yeah, Lockett will have officially surpassed everyone else in every imaginable way. By the way, DK Metcalf's kind of sneaking up back here as well, but he might pass Engram in yards this year. That's probably about it. There's not a lot of opportunities for him to move that far up this list. So, yeah, he's still got some work to do. And I want to shout this out as well, because this is one that slips through the cracks because it's not so obvious. If you go to Tyler Lockett's page on PFR, he has 4 straight seasons of 1,000 receiving yards or more. 4 straight. If he has one more 1,000-yard season, he will be the first player in franchise history to have 1,000 yards or more receiving 5 years in a row. Largent never did it. Largent had 4 in a row twice, but he split those 2 between with one season between those 4 seasons of not getting there. So if Lockett can get to 1,000 yards, and he's got a lot of work to do to get there, but if he does, he will pass Largent, and I think Galloway may have done it once, and be the only player in franchise history to have gotten 1,000 yards or more receiving in 5 straight seasons. Pretty cool. Okay, now we go to the big one, Bobby Wagner. This is the guy who has a chance to do some stuff historically, like all-time great. He already has, but he can add to it this season with the Seahawks. And obviously, he's really got nothing left to prove in terms of the Seahawks. Like, if you go look at StatMuse here and you look up who has the most tackles in a career for the Seahawks, Bobby Wagner is already crushing the field. He's got over 200 more tackles than second place. And if you look at combined tackles, he's the only guy over 1,000. It's not even close. So you could strip a couple seasons away from Wagner and he's still crushing everybody else. So that's already set. But I'm thinking about this historically now. Historically, Bobby Wagner has a chance to keep moving up the list. Mostly, I'm talking about tackle numbers, which you guys know I'm not the world's biggest fan of tackle numbers. By the way, neither is the NFL as a whole, by the way. If you actually take a look at the leaders in all-time tackles, this is a combined tackles list, by the way, just to be clear, you can see that 2 of the top 4 guys all-time in combined tackles, including the guy who's number 2, are not in the Hall of Fame. So you can see how a player can get a lot of tackles in their career but still not be considered all that great. London Fletcher, Jesse Tuggle, Clay Matthews, and Hardy Nickerson, and Donnie Edwards. All those guys are in the top 10 for combined tackles for a career, and none of them are in the Hall of Fame, and I very seriously doubt any of them will be. Like, London Fletcher maybe has a chance. He's got 2,000 combined tackles in his career, and he still hasn't made it, and at this point, I doubt he will. However, on this list, which is still a pretty tough list to crack, Bobby Wagner's already 9th, and if he has even a decent season and gets up to 1,600 combined tackles in his career, he is passing Nickerson and Matthews and moving behind Derek Brooks. Now, he's got no real chance of passing Derek Brooks this year because he's 190 tackles behind. But he definitely should be passing Nickerson and Matthews to move into 7th. Pretty good. Pretty historic. That's something that people are going to be talking about. That's something that matters historically for the entire NFL, not just the Seahawks. But beyond just the tackle numbers, which are nice, I want to talk more about, to me this is bigger, Pro Bowls and All-Pro selections. Because Bobby Wagner is potentially going to do some real damage to the all-time lists on Pro Bowls and All-Pro selections. And those mean a lot more than tackles, I think. So, the linebackers that have been selected to the most Pro Bowls, number 1 is Ray Lewis with 13. Junior Seau has 12. Derek Brooks has 11. And then you have 3 guys with 10. Now, get Lawrence Taylor out of here because, I mean, no disrespect to Lawrence Taylor, the greatest defensive player of all time, but what he's doing is so different from what these other linebackers are doing, doesn't really make sense to have them on the same plane. So, Lawrence Taylor, get out of here. Joe Schmidt played 1 billion years ago, so I would argue you could get him out of here as well, but let's leave him here for the moment. Bobby Wagner is here with 8. There are a couple of players above him with 9. So if Wagner makes the Pro Bowl this year, which he did not last year, but if he does make the Pro Bowl this year, which I think he probably will as long as he has a good season and our defense is decent, then that's 9 Pro Bowls for Bobby Wagner in his career. That would put him in a tie with Derek Thomas, Harry Carson, Jack Lambert, Chris Hanberger, and Maxie, whoever this guy is. And again, Lawrence Taylor, get him out of here. He's an outside linebacker in a 3-4. It's a completely different thing. He's an edge rusher. So at that point, Bobby Wagner would be 6th all-time for an off-ball linebacker in number of Pro Bowls made, tied for 6th. So right there near the very top. And if he does come back for another year in 2024, which people for some reason seem to expect, he has a chance to crack into the double digits and then be tied for a spot in the top 4. So pretty juicy stuff on tap there. But what about the All-Pro stuff? And you guys know that I value All-Pro way more than the Pro Bowl. I do think the Pro Bowl matters when you start to become a player who makes it over and over and over again. But All-Pro really matters. First team All-Pro selection career leaders. You go to this list here. You can see the top guys have 10, Jerry Rice and Jim Otto. But what we're looking for here is Bobby Wagner. You can see that he has 6 first team All-Pro selections. 6. If he gets it again this year, and it's going to be an uphill battle, I'm not saying I think he's going to do it, but if he does, if he gets to 7, that moves him into a tie with Ray Lewis and Mike Singletary among off-ball inside linebackers. There are other linebackers in this list, like Bill George and Joe Schmidt, but they played forever ago, and most of them played 2 ways. Most of them played on offense and defense, so who knows why they made the All-Pro team. They might have made the All-Pro team more for their offensive contributions than their defensive contributions. And there were only like 12 teams back then, so it was way easier to make an All-Pro team. You had way less players you were competing with for those spots. So at that point, isn't he there? Isn't he at the top? If Wagner does that, isn't he tied for the most first team All-Pros in NFL history for an inside off-ball linebacker? Because again, Lawrence Taylor's here, but that's to me a completely different thing. So he's tied with Ray Lewis and Mike Singletary for most first-team All-Pro selections for an inside linebacker, in my estimation anyway, because these guys, you just can't really compare them because it's like almost a different sport. All right, so there's that, and then there's All-Pro teams overall, first or second, because Bobby's made, I think, 3 second-team All-Pros. So if you take a look at the list of players that have made the most All-Pro teams, period, first or second, Reggie Wright's running away with it. He's got 13. Bruce Smith, Jerry Rice. Bobby Wagner is on this list with 9. So if he makes either All-Pro team this year, either one, first or second, that's 10. Double digits. And the only other linebacker here in the double-digit category would be Ray Lewis at 10. And, of course, Lawrence Taylor, but again, I'm not talking about that. So Bobby Wagner would tie Ray Lewis with the most total All-Pro teams in the history of the NFL for an off-ball linebacker. He would move into a tie. And last year he made second team, so it's definitely reasonable to say that he's going to make the All-Pro team second again this year. So those are some of the stakes for the individual players historically in 2023 for the Seahawks. Let me know what you guys think. Did I miss anything? Yeah, pretty good. This Bobby Wagner thing, I mean, this stuff, it's getting pretty heavy here. Let's see if he can do it. All right, see you guys later. Go Hawks. Just another thing to think about going into this season.